All. Mm. Today we're going to discuss about the diabetes mellitus. Right. So the biochemistry and the physiological aspects I've already discussed. You have discussed in the first year the biochemical changes and other aspects like how does glucose is metabolized, glucose is utilized, and what is the role of insulin as a hormone in the metabolism of glucose. So these things are discussed in detail during your first year course, right? Then, of course, simultaneously along with the pharmacology, you are discussing the pathological changes takes place during diabetes mellitus, and of course, its complications, the untreated cases of diabetes mellitus can lead to several complications. So all these things you have been discussing in your medicine and your pathology, etc. So what we are going to discuss in pharmacology is about the pharmacological management. See, when you talk about diabetes, definitely you know there are quite a lot of people takes medicine. Some people takes insulin injections, some people take oral medicines. So those oral medicines are generally collectively called as oral hypoglycemic agents. So those details, like why some drugs are given orally and some people are taking insulin and why it is so, all this part will be discussed in detail. All right. So here, all of you know that in the endocrine pancreas, that there are four different types of functional cells. So this is like I'm just briefing all this. All of you know that we have alpha cell, which is known to produce glucagon, and beta cells, islets of Langerhans, pancreas islets of Langerhans contain beta cells, which is responsible for the synthesis and secretion of insulin and amylin. So amylin is basically which stimulate it's a co-hormone. It's a peptide secreted along with insulin, which stimulate the actions of insulin in various tissues. We'll be discussing about the details of amylin at the end of this class, because nowadays amylin analogs are also used as anti-diabetic medicines. Then delta cells, which produce somatostatin. You have studied the role of somatostatin when we discuss about the growth hormone and all. Then F cells, pancreatic polypeptide, okay, which produce F cells produce pancreatic polypeptides. When you consider the mass of pancreatic endocrine part of the pancreas, all of you know that pancreas got exocrine parts as well as endocrine part, and the endocrine part you consider nearly 90% of the mass, the cell mass, constitute beta cells. So you know the importance of insulin secretion there itself. So this is a structure like where you can see the islets of Langerhans here. There are different type of cells over here, and here you could see this beta cells. All right. Now how does it synthesize and released insulin? It's very important. Like what is the secretagogue and what stimulate the insulin secretion in beta cells, and what is the chemical nature and how does it is synthesized. So this is again you have studied in your previous year, on the first year, that insulin is secreted as proinsulin. This is actually contain two, like you can have a C chain and a B chain. So here this red shaded portion denote the B chain. So when it is secreted or released as proinsulin, the C chain part is cleaved. Okay, then you can see this is a 21 chain A chain and 30 amino acids B chain. So 21 amino acids A chain and 30 amino acid B chain, which is joined by the disulfide bond. So this is the active structure of an insulin, right? I hope you are following the class. Now here when you discuss about this the active insulin, this is the structure, okay, inside the cell, inside the beta cells, it undergo cleavage and the C peptide is cleaved from the A and B chain. Now this is very important, like how does insulin is secreted, what stimulate the secretion of insulin from beta cells. Of course, like when you discuss about the anti-pituitary hormone, the pituitary axis, hypothalamo-pituitary, the gonadoaxis or the hypothalamo-pituitary thyroid axis have been discussed. So there are some inhibitory regulatory mechanism which is responsible for the continuous regulation of the synthesis and release of these hormones. Right. So now we are looking. This is actually a beta cells. Okay. Inside the beta cells, there are insulin vesicle where the insulin is stored. Now, I think I can depict this picture in a different one. This is a better one. I think it's easy to understand. Again, this is a beta cells. Now you can see the insulin vesicles store with the insulin, active insulin molecule, right? And this is glucose transporter. So you have seen that glucose transporter, or abbreviated as GLUT. GLUT can be GLUT1, GLUT2, GLUT3 and all. And some of the GLUT are insulin dependent and some of the GLUT are insulin independent. But whether it is insulin dependent or insulin independent GLUT is responsible for the absorption of glucose. Alright, so some area of the body, say for example brain, which is not under the influence of insulin. Even there is no insulin secretion in the body, brain cells can get continuous supply, adequate supply of glucose through the insulin independent glucose transport. So all these things we have discussed in the biochemistry, right? Now here you go, when you discuss this matter, glucose can be taken into the beta cells through the glucose transported to GLUT2, and which undergo glycolysis and the metabolic pathway where the ATP is generated. So you know that after glycolysis ATP is generated, or even if it is TCA cycle or what, ATP is generated, and this ATP can activate there is something called ATP sensitive potassium channel. ATP sensitive potassium channel. So what happened? Generally in resting stage, this channel remain open. I repeat, generally in the resting stage, this channel remain open. As a result, you know that potassium is an extracellular cation, so which leads to influx of potassium to the cell and causes hyperpolarization of the cell. Right. Now here, when since ATP is generated, this ATP can go and bind to the ATP binding site of the potassium channel, which leads to closure of this channel and causes depolarization. See, unlike a sodium channel or calcium channel, those channel, while opening, it can lead to depolarization. Now this is opposite. Hyperpolarization takes place when the potassium influx into the cells. When it gets stopped, it leads to closure of this channel and leads to a blockade of the potassium influx, causes depolarization of the cell, and this depolarization alter the intracellular current, which leads to opening of voltage gated calcium channel opening, and influx of calcium and disruption of the vesicle exocytosis, and causes release of insulin. And here you can see sulfonylurea and all that we'll discuss when we discuss about respective drugs. All right, so I repeat it again. Glucose is taken through glucose transporter, undergo metabolism, ATP is generated. This ATP and block the potassium channel. It is called ATP sensitive potassium channel, leads to closure of this channel, which in turn causes depolarization of the cell. Depolarization leads to opening of the voltage gated calcium channel, and entry of calcium leads to disruption and exocytosis of the insulin, which is stored in the vesicle, causes insulin secretion. I hope you understood the mechanism of insulin synthesis and release. How does glucose is involved in the insulin secretion? Is that clear? Okay, let's go to the actions of insulin. See, I don't want to discuss about the idea of like a basic concept of diabetes mellitus. Still, before we go to insulin action, I think I should have discussed in the previous slide itself, but still, all of you know that what is diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic condition where the metabolism of glucose is being impaired because of the either the deficiency of insulin or due to the lack of inability or inability of inability of cells to utilize insulin, where there is plenty of insulin molecule may be secreted. Maybe sometimes it can lead to hyperinsulinemia, but it cannot be utilized, and due to a particular condition called insulin resistance. All right. So what happened? Eventually, the glucose level in the blood may goes up, and this glucose cannot be utilized, and glucose level slowly the glucose can be converted into reduced form, various reduced forms. One of the example is sorbitol. Similar reduced sugars are being formed continuously, and I just got one example which is sorbitol, and this sorbitol can be accumulated in the microvasculature, and eventually it can cause us various complications, as you have learned something called neuropathy, retinopathy, nephropathy, okay, etc., etc. So all these things are due to the deposition of these reduced sugars in the microvasculature, and leads to obstruction, and of course diabetes is considered as an important risk factor for the cardiovascular disease also. So all of you know the importance of maintaining the blood glucose level. Otherwise, the uncontrolled glucose level eventually leads to complications. What we have discussed now, it can lead to blindness, it can lead to renal failure, it can lead to cardiovascular diseases, it can lead to various other complications. So this is very important to maintain blood glucose level in a controlled manner in the blood. Definitely, all of you know that. And I want to discuss the symptoms again. We'll be discussing, but you know well about that symptoms. You have learned about polyphagia, polydipsia, all these things, and of course you learn about the uncontrolled level which can lead to diabetic ketoacidosis and ketoacidotic coma. All these things are well understood. Now again, we'll be discussing these points whenever this comes under the discussion. Fine. All these are the highlighting factor about the diabetes. Fine. Now you have learned that there are different types of receptors, and tyrosine kinase linked receptors are the membrane receptors. You can see this here. Examples for the tyrosine kinase linked receptors in the bodies include, we have growth hormone, we have insulin receptors, we have the various interleukin receptors like TNF alpha, etc. So all these are the examples for the tyrosine kinase linked receptors, and as I rightly told now, it is these insulin receptors are example for the tyrosine kinase linked receptors or the enzymatic receptors. You can see this tyrosine kinase here. It's a transmembrane helix and extracellular domain where the insulin can bind. This dark shaded green part is insulin, which is a ligand on this receptor, leads to dimerization, causes activation of various proteins, intracellular proteins, leads to, see, this is what happened when the insulin is secreted and act on the gene coded for the glucose transport. It's a protein. So various mechanisms are there. Excuse me. One is that which can act on the gene inside the nucleus at the DNA, and it can activate the gene coded for the GLUT, that is your glucose transport, and leads to expression of this glucose. And of course many other functions which includes protein synthesis, fat synthesis, growth and gene expression, glycogen synthesis, etc. All right. So you can consider insulin as a holistic approach. You can consider insulin as a anabolic hormone. Okay. See, most of the hormones in the bodies are catabolic in nature, but growth hormone, insulin, etc. are the anabolic hormone. You can see clearly notice the anabolic effect. See the protein synthesis, fat synthesis, glycogen synthesis, growth and gene expression, which leads to cell division, and all those are part of the cell. So hence you can consider insulin as an anabolic hormone. Right. Now moving on to the insulin action. What are the insulin actions? Again, this is what we have discussed, the same thing. The tyrosine kinase linked receptors, various proteins, intracellular proteins are activated. This part have been discussed in general pharmacology when we discuss about the pharmacodynamics. All right. So which eventually activate various genes like mitogenesis, protein synthesis, glycogen synthesis, And of course, gene coded for the glucose transport. It's a protein, though it is a channel. It is a protein which expressed from the cell membrane of various cells leads to opening of this channel and absorption of glucose, utilization of the glucose. Okay, so this is what the role of insulin. All these actions are contributed, all these actions are possible because of the receptor. What are the principal actions of insulin? This is very important, right? We have seen this. There are genetic level actions and plus protein synthesis, glycogen synthesis, etc. And what are the actions? Now, there are rapid actions which takes place in seconds, which include increased transport of glucose, amino acids and potassium into insulin sensitive cells. So this action usually takes place in seconds as soon as the insulin is secreted here. Now, second one is intermediate, which may take some minutes. All right, intermediate action. So stimulation of protein synthesis is an example for the intermediate actions produced by insulin, which takes minutes, whereas the glucose absorption is a second, takes place in seconds. All right. Then inhibition of protein degradation. As I told you, it's an anabolic hormone which increase the protein synthesis. Then activation of glycolytic enzymes. See, glycolysis should be taken place. So immediately when the glucose is entered into the cell, glycolytic pathways get activated. And other enzymes like phosphorylase enzymes, gluconeogenic enzymes, etc. all are activated, all are inhibited. Okay. Then delayed, which may take hours to come into the action, which is at the genetic level where the mRNA, messenger RNAs for the lipogenic and other enzymes are activated. So this is basically not a direct effect, it's act on the mRNA, stimulation of the mRNA coded for the lipogenic and other enzyme. Now, again, I didn't tell you different types of diabetes. So you know that you all well learned that diabetes is generally classified into type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is called insulin dependent or juvenile diabetes, whereas type 2 is called insulin resistant. All right. So adult onset, type 2 is also called adult onset, right? And type 1 is basically due to the complete or absolute or relative insulin deficiency. It could be due to several reasons. Maybe autoantibody generation against beta cells, where the complete beta cells destruction leads to type 1, which actually takes place at the early age. That's why it is called juvenile. And type 2 is basically takes place around the age of 40 and above, 40, 45, etc. Where due to various reasons, generally what happens, the insulin will be secreted sufficiently, but what happens, the sufficiently secreted insulin cannot be utilized due to the insulin resistance. Okay, so this is what we address as type 2 diabetes. And in some textbooks they say the gestational diabetes. Some people shows the hyperglycemia and other diabetic complications first time during the pregnancy, and this is generally referred as gestational diabetes. So some classifications include gestational diabetes as a type or the third type, but for our reference we consider it as a type 1 and type 2. Here you can see some of the difference between type 1 and type 2. As I told you, type 1 is autoimmune disorder, okay, autoimmune disorder, and type 2 insulin resistance with inadequate beta cell function to compensate. So what happened? In some cases insulin resistance may be present, but accordingly the beta cells cannot secrete, and in some cases it can even lead to hyperinsulinemia. Insulin level, as I told you, absent or negligible in type 1, whereas in type 2 typically higher than normal. All right. Absent or negligible as far as the insulin action is concerned in type 1, whereas insulin action is decreased in type 2. Why it is absent? Because there is no insulin, that's why it is absent. Or maybe a minute quantity of insulin may be secreted due to the existence of a small fraction of beta cells. All right. Whereas type 2 is decreased. Insulin action is decreased. As we have discussed that it is due to the insulin resistance. Uh, it's not part of there's no insulin resistance, but insulin resistance is very common in type 2. We have discussed that part also. And I told you this is called, type 1 is called juvenile onset because most of the people, the onset age is very younger, the tender age. That's why it's called juvenile age. And whereas in type 2, there's insulin resistance and all gradually starts the age of 40 or above. That's why it is adult onset in nature. Excuse me. Ketoacidosis and muscle wasting can be noted. Then in case of type 2 hyperglycemia, which even leads to hyperosmotic seizures and coma. I see what happened, the glucose level in the blood keep increasing, hyperosmolarity based complications, even seizures and other complications can be expected in case of type 2 diabetes as a complication if the patient is remained untreated. Again, some more differences. As far as the chronic complications are concerns of type 1 and type 2 is, say, neuropathy, retinopathy, nephropathy, peripheral vascular diseases, coronary artery diseases, etc. Peripheral vascular diseases, coronary artery diseases, etc. Okay, and the complications are all more almost same in both type 1 and type 2. Then, generally, the pharmacological intervention, this is our cup of tea, where in the first slide I told you that some people have been treated with insulin and some people are treated with other medications are collectively called as oral hypoglycemic agents, and how this difference takes place. Generally in type 1, as you know that type 1 is due to the absolute deficiency of insulin. Of course, you have to substitute insulin, and this is what we are doing in the treatment of pharmacological management of type 1 diabetes, where various insulin formulations are administered based on the patient's factors, multiple factors. And in type 2, various drugs, in some cases nowadays insulin is also given. Insulin is also given in type 2 diabetes. Apart from insulin, there are many other drugs are collectively called as oral hypoglycemics. But now we have exenatide. It's a newer drug which is actually not insulin, but it incretin analog, where it is given as parenterally, not given as orally. So as a broad drug group of drug, you cannot consider all the other drugs except insulin are oral hypoglycemics, for your kind information. Okay, I repeat, for your kind information, apart from insulin, some other drugs are also administered as parenteral route nowadays, and I quoted one example, which is exenatide. All right. Now, this is again not very much, I think, need not to be elaborated. It's not our cup of tea, but still, when you consider diabetes as a holistic, as a condition, we have to briefly tell you the diagnosis. Polyuria, polydipsia, and weight loss associated with a random plasma glucose 200 milligram per deciliter. Then plasma glucose of 126 milligram per deciliter or higher after an overnight fast, documented on more than one occasion. Ketonemia, ketonuria, or both, all are the diagnostic steps. Islets autoantibodies frequently present. See, this is, you know well that in type 1, autoantibody against beta cells destroy beta cells. So sometimes what happens, you can see, you can detect autoantibodies of islets. So this is about type 1. All right, insulin, you can see this, all these points. Or then when you go to type 2, as you know that this is mainly hit on the people age group 40 years and above, and of course obesity is considered as a one risk factor, because obesity may increase the insulin resistance. All right, and you can see polyuria and polydipsia. I hope you know what is polyuria, frequent urination, and polydipsia. Polyphagia may be there, excessive thirst and hungry. Ketonuria and weight loss generally are uncommon at time of diagnosis. So initially you don't find ketonuria because Gradually the insulin resistance are worsened, and eventually the patient may fall into ketonuria. When the glucose level goes beyond 280 milligram, 300 above, then candidal vaginitis in females may be an initial manifestation. See it may a media because of the sugar, increased sugar, and all those things may promote the fungal growth. Okay, so this can be denoted. This can be noted in the females as a early, and of course, all these are very much applicable. The glucose level and all these things, and you may also check something called glycosylated hemoglobin, where it's a measure of how chronic it is. See, if it is a very newer, like you don't find much elevated level of glycosylated hemoglobin. So generally it's a 7 is considered as normal, and when it goes 8, 9 and all, you will come to know it's a chronic condition. Okay. And of course this is very important. Many patients have few or no symptoms. There are many people who remain asymptomatic, and randomly some people diagnose hyperglycemia and diabetes. Surprisingly, they will not have any kind of symptoms. All right, many people in society, like when people comes to OPD, as a coincidentally, when the physician or the doctor asks for blood checkup, routine blood checkup, and they will come to know that the sugar is uncontrolled. So coincidentally, many people diagnose diabetes. Okay. Now we are moving to very important points as far as the pharmacology is concerned. This is about insulin preparations. See, conventionally, historically, you have seen the structure of insulin. There are A chain with the 20 amino acids and B chain 31 amino acids. So, in olden days, we used to manage with bovine and porcine insulin preparations, cattle and pork, bovine and porcine insulin. Now what happened? Why these insulin preparations are preferred? Simple. The insulin structure of these two species are closely resemble with a human insulin. See, though the amino acid sequence are differ, I'll show you here. I have a here you go. This is a beta chain and A chain, B chain and A chain, sorry, A, B chain and A chain, 20 amino acids and 31 amino acids. And here the amino acid sequence vary in with a single amino acid are differ in these two species when you compare to human insulin. That's why we used to use this insulin preparation after filtering. But the problem, though it is very close to human insulin, but it is not identical to human insulin. And what happened after the recombinant DNA technology have commercialized, and we have started manufacturing, or we have started synthesizing human insulin, identical to human insulin by the recombinant DNA technology. So what happened? You see Humulin, Lilly and all are human insulin. Now we don't use these bovine and porcine insulin because we have human insulin. Right. Now consider this is a human insulin having A and beta chain. Now what happened? Of course, you know that insulin, the human insulin has got a very short half-life. Now we have conducted various studies on the structure, altering the structure of insulin without changing or without changing the functionality of the insulin and without producing any immunogenicity and other problem. So what happened? We have developed some insulin preparations by substituting some amino acid sequences. You can see this insulin glucosylation is a preparation where aspartate has been replaced or substituted with lysine. So similarly, many other adding one or two amino acid sequence to the carboxylic acid end of the B chain also contribute some newer insulin preparation. And I wanted to tell you that whatever the insulin preparations are given or used nowadays are result of slight modification of this, and you can thank the recombinant DNA technology which solve the issue of humankind, because you know that millions of people are affected by this problem and all require insulin. And a simple logic is that insulin is a drug which is administered always through parenterally. For the routine practice, we use always subcutaneous route, and in emergency, some preparations are given through intravenously, like ketoacidosis, coma, and all. Fine. Why don't you give insulin orally? Anyone? It's very simple, because you know that insulin is polypeptide, and if it is given orally, it can be digested by the digestive enzyme, and you will not get any effect of insulin. That's the reason. Simple. You know well. Now we'll go back to the insulin preparations. I told you that insulin, basically human insulin, are short. Okay, and modification or structural modifications yield some 4 different classes of insulin. We have ultra short acting. This is Lispro, Aspart, and Glulisine. See, it's ultra short acting, shorter than normally acting, normal insulin or the human insulin, which is mainly intended to use to manage postprandial hypoglycemia. Then short acting. Short acting is identically the human insulin. This is your regular human insulin. And we have intermediate acting insulin, where it is longer than human insulin. We have NPH and Lente. Lente and NPH, these are actually somehow longer acting insulin. Excuse me. Once again. Okay, fine. NPH stands for neutral protamine hagdon. Okay, it's a protein. I think if my memories are correct, I think it's a protein isolated for salmon fish. Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. Excuse me. Okay, then Lente is suspension of insulin, combination of insulin with a single compound. So both these preparations are intended to act some more time, so that the frequency of administration can be reduced. See, you know well that continuously injection. See, imagine 5 to 6 times of subcutaneous injection per day. It's quite cumbersome. All right, people cannot imagine the gravity of 5 to 6 injection per day, and the economic impact, pain, inconvenience, all cash. All right, so we are trying to increase the duration of action so that the frequency of administration can be reduced. Finally, we have slow and long acting, where this insulin will not have any peak. See, all the 3 insulin we have discussed: ultra short acting, and intermediate acting. All these 3 insulins have got peak in the blood. Peak, you can see here. I'll show you. This is, see, short acting, ultra short acting, the short acting, and intermediate acting. All this, though the intermediate acting peak is not very significant, of course ultra short acting and short acting have got a very good peak, whereas this is the long acting insulin, and we have example Glargine and Detamir. So these are the longer acting insulin, and the advantage is that peakless, and you can cover nearly round the clock. Single injection, round the clock. You don't have to think about insulin preparation, and it is peakless also. So no much problem even if you miss a meal, but still it can precipitate a sort of hypoglycemia. All right. Now I wanted to add one more point when you talk about this slow and long. Nowadays, you know, some of the studies have proven that, identified that longer acting insulin can cause some of the malignancy, because when the level of insulin is present in the blood as a elevated level of the insulin, it can it can stimulate various mutagens, various uh, oncogenes, stimulation of the oncogenes, expression of the oncogenes. Eventually it can interfere the uh, replication replication of the cells, and even it can precipitate some of the cancer. So currently there are plenty of studies are going on the effect of long and slow acting insulin. What happens if the insulin level is elevated in the blood, sustained elevated level of insulin? Excuse me. I'm sorry. All right. So I hope you understood these classification: ultra short acting, intermediate acting, and slow and long acting. Examples are given here: Lispro, Aspart, Glulisine for the ultra short acting. Short acting we have regular insulin, and intermediate acting we have NPH and Lente. Slow and long acting insulin examples are Glargine and Determin. And this has been already discussed that the long acting can cover 24 hours round the clock coverage with a single injection. Can be expected with a long acting. In fact, that is the purpose. With a single injection, it can cover a day. Now we have some of the insulin preparations. Some see the nowadays the insulin preparations are pre-mixed. It may be mixture of ultra short acting with the intermediate acting, human insulin with the long acting. Purpose is to cover the basal level, to cover the postprandial hyperglycemia, okay, or acute hyperglycemia, all can be covered. So this is the pre-mixed insulin preparations. Regular insulin, unmodified, all right, 0.5 to 1 minute, peak 2 to 3 minutes, 6 to 8 minutes is duration, all right. Now NPH again 2 to 4 hours. All this you can see this about insulin. So now NPH is insulin of choice in pregnancy, and Glargine. Okay, this is basal insulin coverage. So this is already discussed. Okay, this is all various preparations of insulin available. Premixed and plain insulins are also there. Now again, this is the structure of insulin where you have modified. You can see here this addition of aspartate, insulin Glargine. Okay, and here this cysteine. Here you can lysine error change to glutamic acid in insulin Glulisine. That name, you can pick the insulin amino acid substitution from the name. Glulisine, glutamic acid with lysine. Okay. So this is how the insulin preparation is being made. Various insulin preparation is being made. I hope you understood. I think this is nothing new over here. We are discussing the various pharmacological aspects. Fine. So we are discussing one by one the group ultra short acting, injected immediately before a meal, and are the preferred insulin for continuous subcutaneous infusion devices. See, it's an automated device where insulin can be continuously, the blood level of the insulin can be sensed by the sensor, and accordingly it can inject, pump. It is called continuous subcutaneous infusion device. And this preparation can be used for emergency treatment of uncomplicated diabetic ketoacidosis as IV. So please remember, ultra short acting, like examples like Lispro, Aspart and all can be given as intravenous preparation. And why I am emphasizing the IV, because regularly common route of administration is subcutaneous. Next one is regular insulin. It's your human is used IV in emergencies or administered subcutaneous in ordinary maintenance regimens. So this is the normal route, subcutaneous. You have seen the insulin injection, and that's a route of administration as far as the routine management of diabetes is concerned, where in emergency where you can go for intravenous administration. And as I told you, it can be used as alone, as a sole agent, but to cover more time with a single injection, it can be mixed with long-acting drugs or intermediate-acting preparations. So what happened? Short-acting one can have a immediate onset, whereas the longer acting can cover more period. This was a primary form of insulin used for controlling postprandial glucose level, because immediately the peak can have the onset of action is very short, so the postprandial hypoglycemia can be covered. But nowadays postprandial is covered with the ultra short acting, and it requires administration 1 hour or more before a meal, so that the postprandial level can be covered. Next, the third type is intermediate acting. We have NPH, and that is neutral protamine hormone. Then we have NPH. So this protamine is a protein which combined with the insulin, so that immiscible form it's almost like a what you call generally we call depot preparations. I hope you remember the term depot preparation, DEPOT, depot preparations. If you don't remember, please refer what is depot preparation. NPH is often combined with the regular and rapid acting insulin. See, the pre-mixed insulin preparations are available according to the patient convenience, like to cover around the clock, or only to the postprandial, or to cover the baseline, etc. So based on the patient's requirements, the pre-mixed insulin preparations are available. And finally we have long-acting insulin preparations. Long-acting insulin preparations, we have insulin glargine and insulin detamol. And this is the importance we have discussed, that it is peakless and cover round the clock. Am I right? We have discussed it. And it's peakless. More than 20 hours, nearly it comes around to 24 hours. That's what I frequently use, round the clock, round the clock, round the clock. Alright? So please remember that. And since there is no peak, this drug will not produce much of hypoglycemia. See, all these short acting, ultra short acting, and even intermediate drugs are also non-culprits to produce hypoglycemia if you miss a meal after injecting this drug. And that problem may not be seen with a continuous subcutaneous injection device, because it is being sensing, like it can sense the glucose, blood glucose level in the blood glucose level, and accordingly it can release insulin, all right, from the reservoir. Now, insulin delivery system is very important as far as the pharmacology is concerned, because some people keep saying that it's intramuscular injection, or if somebody asks like, why don't you give insulin orally, some people still doesn't know why don't you give insulin, and because they don't know what is the chemical nature of insulin, or they don't have a wild thought like this. Insulin is a protein, and if it is given orally, for that matter, any protein particles or protein substances are given orally, it can be digested by the your intestinal and gastric juices. All right, fine. And I told you, though the standard route is subcutaneous, it is also administered IV. And one more thing I want to tell you, some of the companies that recently introduced the transnasal, the inhalation route, but it is no longer available due to the inconvenience. The complaints of the patient complaints is minimum. We have portable pen-sized injectors. Have you seen the insulin pen, where the cartridge can be refilled and that pen can be used without much pain? Anyway, we will discuss these part when you come for the practical. We have a practical session for that. That's why I don't want to explain all these things under this topic, in this class. This pen contain replaceable cartridges, whereas others are disposables. Okay. Now we have a continuous subcutaneous insulin injection system. As I already mentioned, that it can sense the plasma glucose level, and accordingly it can inject the insulin into the blood. So advantage is that the patient will not go to hypoglycemia. See what happened when you normally when you take a long acting insulin, and the patient, long acting means intermediate acting or something, the patient may have an elevated insulin level, and unfortunately the person could not take meal, and that can lead to hypoglycemia. Okay, so that problem may not be there in the CSII, that is continuous subcutaneous insulin injection, because it sends you a plasma sugar level. Then others like programmable pumps deliver, which a constant 24-hour basal rate can be maintained by this programmable. All these are the sophisticated devices of gadgets type. Manual adjustments in the rate of delivery can be made to accommodate changes in insulin requirements before meals or exercise. See, accordingly, like, see, you need more units, you can adjust, and you need to reduce maybe after exercise. The patient may fall into hypoglycemia, so accordingly you can adjust. And we have a separate section, in fact, the insulin delivery system. So we will discuss all these, and it's for your kind of information. Some of this preparation, some of the preparations and some of the delivery systems are available in the market. And I'm really sorry that I didn't include all these photos of these devices, because I was under the impression that when we discuss about the practicals, definitely you will come across all these things. That's the reason. Now, as I told you, some other routes, oral insulin and nasal insulin. See, oral insulin is always difficult, but as far as the medicine is concerned, the most convenient route of administration is oral. As you have already discussed that, oral is very cheaper, very convenient, and anybody can take, and many advantages are there, though it has got some drawbacks. Can you just recollect what are the drawbacks of the oral administration? But unfortunately, insulin is happened to be a protein and cannot be given orally. All of was novel about that. Then, as I told you, nasal insulin, a few years back, I think it's 2005 or 6, one company had developed nasal insulin, that is inhaled insulin. The brand name was Exubera from Pfizer. Yes, it was Pfizer, none other than the blockbuster market drug producer Pfizer, because like its patient complaints was less, and it's totally failed. It was a marketing failure. So after a few years of marketing, they withdrew. Then we have another brand, Afrezza. It was from Mankind. Okay, this year means 2012. Okay. Now let's discuss hazards of insulin use. I know that you can easily guess what are the hazards of insulin use. Simple. When a person endogenously synthesize insulin, secrete insulin, it is based on the blood glucose level. You have seen that that ATP sensitive potassium channel uptake of glucose into the beta cells. That part is very prominent here. That's how insulin secretion is regulated. But when you substitute insulin exogenously, this factor cannot be considered except in the continuous subcutaneous insulin injection. Here, this is something like, irrespective of the blood glucose level, the insulin may be persistently high. That can lead to hypoglycemia. So the most important problem is hypoglycemia due to excessive insulin effect. To prevent the brain damage that may result from hypoglycemia, prompt treatment must. So hypoglycemia should be addressed. See, though brain cells are not dependent on insulin, but insulin overexpression can lead to hypoglycemia. That can affect the brain cells. So you know that brain cells require continuous glucose supply for its function. So any delay that can be devastating. Okay. Administration of glucose, sugar candy or mouths like glucose by vein, means IV glucose, dextrose, that can be a measure. Or glucagon, because it can mutually antagonize the effect of insulin. So this is how you treat. So please remember, how do you manage hypoglycemia? You can give oral sugar candy or glucose even parenteral. If it's the emergency, you have to give. Severe condition, you have to manage with the parenteral. And since glucagon has got glucagon is a physiological antagonist, I would use the best word to fit there. It is a physiological antagonist. Again, it's your task. If you don't remember what you mean by physiological antagonist, go and check what is physiological antagonist. So hypoglycemia is the most important problem. Now, who are at risk of developing hypoglycemia? All are at risk, but some categories are more, which can cause detrimental effects of insulin hypoglycemia. Patients with advanced renal disease, see the metabolism and excretion may be affected, so that where the people may require a dose adjustment. Elderly, because polypharmacy and diminished liver function and renal function. Children younger than 7 years are more susceptible to the detrimental effects of hypoglycemia, because all these are the people who are vulnerable categories. So apart from hypoglycemia, what else? See the immunogenicity. See, this is mainly applicable to the other strains of insulin, as we have discussed that bovine and porcine insulin we use to manage diabetes. Those insulin preparations were highly immunogenic and used to produce antibodies. All right. So the incidence of these problem, immunogenicity and all, are very less when you use human insulin. And another problem is like if a person continuously prefer a same site for every day of injection, it can lead to some reactions, leads to lipodystrophy. So that has to be considered, and that's the reason you have to keep rotating, keep changing the injection site. And then highly purified human insulin, as I told you, immunogenicity and immunologic complications are uncommon. Okay, so I think we'll stop here. Part 1 of the diabetes mellitus shall wind up here. So what we have discussed is about the basic concept of the diabetes mellitus, which is already discussed in various other subjects. So I don't want to have an overlap of this discussion, and I don't want to tax your brain also. Fine. So I'm directly going to discuss, I've already discussed, I'm sorry, this is to summarize. We have already discussed about the insulin preparations, types of insulin and insulin complications, etc., etc. So this is about the detail about insulin as such in pharmacological viewpoints. Insulin is considered like this. So please read, and if you have any doubt, you can directly message WhatsApp me, or you can call at any time. Your rep has got my number, so please don't hesitate. Please do that, and you can always have feedback of the class. I'm very happy because it's a new platform that we are following now. If you have any suggestions, positive or negative suggestions, whatever, we'll take it as a positive only, and we will try to comply your feedback. So please don't hesitate. Second thing, to ensure attendance, please comment your name after listening all this. So please comment your name and roll number after listening this part. Okay, thank you. We shall wind up here the first part, and again we'll be continuing tomorrow about the second part. So please try to finish it today itself, and please read the textbook. And if you require, we may have a discussion in some other online methods. If you require, I'm happy to do that. Fine. Thank you. Thank you for your patience for listening. Once again, I appreciate your patience. Right. Thank you.